Okay, welcome back to Live Impact News here. We are going to take some time to speak with a special guest, Dr. Brian Wolshon, joining us, a professor of engineering at Louisiana State University, LSU. We'll give him a Go Tigers, Dr. Wolshon, as we welcome you on. I can't quite get the Go Tigers. Like, I can't fully embody the right spirit of the Go Tigers, but we're happy to have you here nonetheless. I'm Connor, and again, thank you for joining Live Impact News. We're talking about some of those hurricane preparedness and hurricane safety options once a natural disaster does strike. And we're really kind of focusing on evacuation here as we talk to Dr. Wolshon. Now, I'm wondering if we can at least speak to this first and foremost before we dive into the questions. Do you find that evacuation orders are given their proper due and respect by those who they're directed towards on a general basis?
Sorry to give you this answer, but yes and no. I think that people are definitely, as we know, evacuations are disruptive and inconvenient and costly, and no one likes them. But if when faced with a life and death threat, absolutely, we've seen over and over that people will evacuate. They have to feel that level of threat before they do so, and sometimes that happens a little bit late. And it's not always ideal from a traffic movement standpoint, but I think by and large, if there's a threat, people still, thank goodness, will respond appropriately.
Okay, so that I would say, like you said, good and bad news. But ultimately, when things do rise to the level, people tend to listen, which is good because it, of course, is for their safety. Now, once you get people to decide to evacuate, or once you let people know that they need to evacuate, well, now there's a whole nother degree of obstacle to clear, which is a safe and well-organized evacuation. The first place a lot of people's minds go to is, what are the roads going to look like if everyone else around here is getting the same message that we are?
Yes.
How does evacuation timing, decision-making, and process affect traffic congestions, and what type of issue has this presented based on past research for safe evacuations?
Wow, great question. A lot to unpack there. But really quickly, let me try to break this down. What happens is it's what we call a threat response process. So when people feel threatened, they respond. And then what we have to look at, what we try to understand is when they leave, where they're leaving from, where they're going to, and then the routes that they're going to take. So the routes that they choose to take vary based on a lot of things, and it's really based primarily on travel time and availability. So people like to take the routes that they're familiar with, that they know where they're going and they know what the conditions are going to be. That's been helped a lot by navigational devices, and things that give us ideas of travel time, like Waze or Google Maps, and on, those types of things. But the issues that happen is that we have a lot of people moving basically in one or an outbound, we'll call it, direction. And they're doing it over a very short amount of time, meaning that usually when people are motivated to go, that motivates other people to go. So we have this, what we call a directional surge, that the roads are not designed to accommodate. Roads, by and large, and if you look at Norfolk, Newport News area, all those roads in that area are really meant to provide capacity for the movement of traffic during two periods of the day. That's the morning peak hour, or peak period, and the evening peak period. What we see with evacuation traffic is that you can almost take that peak period and make it last 8, 10, 12 hours, sometimes even more than that. So there's a lot of techniques that we try to encourage. I've done it through research and we've done it through study, and we see that these are very effective for moving traffic.
Can we go through some of those techniques and explore what the most important ones are?
Yeah, that's a great question. The most important thing is individual decision making. So, is with good communications and letting people know, here's what we anticipate, they can make good decisions to leave early or to take alternate routes. That's number one. And that's something that people can do on their own. in terms of what maybe the police or law enforcement or the state DOT can do, they can use things like contraflow, which is where they reverse the flow of the inbound lanes to get more lanes flowing outbound. That takes a lot of planning and forethought, and it takes a lot of management and control manpower. So, that it's not easy to do, but it can be used. Some of the other things that we see where you have a lot of bridges, tolls will be waived. Sometimes what will happen is traffic signals will be modified to give priority to or facilitate movements in, again, the outbound direction. Or sometimes they put in the opposite restrictions so that you don't have a lot of people waiting to make turns. It might be more inconvenient for some individuals, but in the aggregate, on the whole, it moves more people more efficiently.
Okay, I think the most important thing that I've taken there is that there are strategies, there are things that can be done, but like you said, it takes a lot of organization, effort, foresight, which is also what we preach when it comes to hurricane preparedness in general. So, you certainly hope that as every single citizen is taking those steps, so are the people who are in charge of making sure that everybody's safe. If we're all doing that, then hopefully everybody can make it through these natural disasters in a safe way. You mentioned something that I want to go back to, which is that a lot of people choose routes based on familiarity. But does that not go out the window when we're in a totally and completely unfamiliar situation? And would you encourage people to maybe abandon that principle as they make their decisions?
Yes. So the phrase that you used is, does that go out the window? Look, if it's life and death, most things go out the window because what you're trying to do is you're trying to stay alive and preserve your safety and your loved one's safety. So what we have now is a lot of good technology. On everybody's phone, you have things like Google Maps and Waze, and they will suggest, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers are familiar with, they will suggest routes that are faster for travel time, are less congested. One of the issues or the problems that we see in evacuations is that the scope and the scale is so large that even things that happen far away can propagate back and cause problems, or routes that look to be open and clear now become congested by the time people get to those locations. So the idea that we always encourage people is, if you can, leave early. And this is nothing new for anybody. If you leave early, usually what you can do is, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be convenient. It's not like a normal commute, but at least you're going to keep moving. The principle that we want to avoid at all costs is to have people, A, not be able to get out because traffic isn't moving, or B, choose not to evacuate because they feel or that they see that traffic isn't moving. So, as engineers, as someone who has researched this topic, we there's a lot of moving parts to this, if you will, for good decisions to be made. But it takes forethought and planning and preparedness, as you said.
It really seems like that's the key. I mean, with all of the technicalities that need to be adhered to and the different strategies that there are, that preparation, that forethought really seems to be at the foundation of making sure this works for everybody. Is there any final piece of advice that you would want to give to our viewers before we let you go?
Yes, by far. And we, as you were talking about, Coach O here at LSU with Go Tigers, what he does a commercial for us here in Louisiana. They call it getting a game plan. And what that encourages every citizen to do is to go to the website for your emergency preparedness agency, look at the maps, know where you're going to go, plan in advance, and most importantly, to answer your question, listen when authorities tell you you need to go. These are not decisions that are made off the cuff or without proper motivation. So if they're telling you to go, you go, because it's a life safety decision. It's not just convenience or whether you have electricity and air conditioning. It could be life and death. So listen and pay attention and act accordingly.
All right. Well, Dr. Wolshon, we really appreciate your time. Of course, Coach O rejoining the LSU football program under Lane Kiffin. But for us here on Live Impact News, we are just happy to have been joined by Dr. Brian Wolshon from Louisiana State University. And we certainly hope that we don't ever have to evacuate. But if we do, your advice is greatly needed and appreciated. So, Dr. Wolshon, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, once again, Dr. Brian Wolshon from Louisiana State University, a professor of engineering with a lot of good advice there and a lot of good insight into how this evacuation process has evolved over time and some of the things you can do to make sure it works for you.